Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna and welcome, devotees on the line. Thank you very much for your kind association. As we associate with Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2, Chapter 5, verses 9 to 20, the cause of all causes. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namustute Tapta Kanchana Gurvangi Vrindavaneshwar Shabanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Pastatya Desata Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Piyusha Sarva Vedeka Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidwando Didaritya Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures O most prominent translated food of all the Vedas O you are enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actual Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Premavashasharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namaskute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you unattained transcendental bliss, for your syllables rain pure love but upon the reader. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madhikabandhu Matsangim Madguru Madmahadana Manishtaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namastute. Srimad Bhagavatam. O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. Sadhu sadhu tadahi natini chochataraka hanamuncha kadachinmam premna ripkatayo spura. O Srimad Bhagavatam. O give us saintliness to the unsaintly, of love to the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest in my heart. Please become manifest for my heart and my throat, accompanied by love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yotonvayaritarata Charte Swabhigna Swara Tene Brahma Hedayadi Kavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Sargom Risha Damna Svena Sada Nirastakwakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of the Spirit, O pervading personality of God, offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primary cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reaction of three modes of nature, prefectual, although they are unreal. I meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in transcendental abode, which is far free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayanalpaisha Sabya Kalabasmin Yuge Jana Manda Subanda Matayo Manda Bhagupadrata. All in one in this age of Kali, many but short lives, they are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all always disturbed. Narayana Maskritya Narachevam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful praise unto the personality of God and Narayan. unto Narendra which is the supreme human being and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to the Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savaitum saparo dharmo yatho bhaktira dokshaja ahitukya pratyatayat masuprasiddhati. The supreme occupation, dharma of all humanity, is that by which man can attain to loving devotion to the Son, to the Prince and the Lord. Such devotion serves must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitam Jana Yatsya Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahitakam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of God, Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Vedanti Tattvavidas Tattvam Yat Gnanam Advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Sapyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth called as non-dual substance Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan Shrushru Shroshadhanasya Vasudeva Katharuchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great services done. By such service one gains vanity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. Shranvatam Swakata Punya Shravana Kirtana Reddantastoya Bhadrani Vidunoti Surit Satam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees, develop the urge to hear his messages which in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nastaprashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Tamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Nishtiki. By regular attendance in the classes of the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendent songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Etavan Sankhya Yoga Bhyam Swadharmam Parinishtaya Janmalava Parapumsam Ante Narayana Smriti. The highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. Vakama sarva kamo va moksha kamo udharariti vrena bhakti yogena yajate purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desires, without any material desires or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We continue Srimad Bhagavatam based on teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna and welcome again. Let us recap any feedback from Canto 2, Chapter 5, verses 1 to 8 that we covered last week. Anything that caught your attention, that you remembered, please share in the chat. I will share one power statement from Srila Prabhupada while anyone shares in the chat. Following in the footsteps, Srila Prabhupada, this is Chapter 5, Text 7, Prabhupada says, following the footsteps of Sri Narad Muni, one should not blindly accept his spiritual master as God himself. A spiritual master duly respected on par with God, but a spiritual master claiming to be God himself should at once be rejected. Narad Muni accepted Brahma as the supreme due to Lord Brahma's wonderful acts in creation, but doubts arose in him when he saw that Lord Brahma also worshipped some superior authority. The supreme is supreme, and he has no worshipable superior. So Narad Muni began to ask 6 questions, and one reason why Narad Muni had asked these questions to Lord Brahma was that it seems that Lord Brahma is doing everything, creating, and it seems like there is no one superior to Lord Brahma. But even though Narad Muni presented the 6 questions to Lord Brahma, the 6 questions covered the aspect of creation, and we mentioned that these 6 questions practically are completely exhaustive in the sense they cover everything about creation. Anything you want to know about creation is summarized within these 6 questions. The first question was, Yat Rupam, what are the symptoms of the universe? Then Yat Adhishtanam, what is the shelter of the universe, of creation? Then Yata Shrishtam, how is the universe created? Then Shastam, how is it maintained and destroyed? Yat Param, what is it depending on? What is the creation depending on? Is there a basis? And what are the ingredients? So everything about creation, how it's created, how it's maintained, how it's destroyed, how it looks, the ingredients, is there a basis? Is there somebody that is behind this creation? And in this way, Narad Muni presented these 6 questions. And he also motivated why he presented these 6 questions to Lord Brahma, and why Lord Brahma is a perfect teacher to answer these questions. He said, because you know everything. You created past, present, and future. You existed before creation, so you know everything. Just like he gave the example of a walnut. Somebody holds a walnut, they know they have control of their walnut. They know about the walnut. So you know about the creation. It seems you are independent. You are self-sufficient. You created the creation from your own energies. So it seems like you're self-sufficient. Narad Muni gave the example of the spider, like the spider creating its web from its saliva. Doesn't need an external source. This is a bewildering aspect for many people, because in material creation, when we see things created in the material world, there's always the effect, and then there's a cause, there's a source. Without the source, you cannot have the product. Just like we exist because of our parents. Our parents exist because they have a source. So this is material understanding. But in the spiritual realm, we find that there's a concept of self-sufficiency. Krishna doesn't need a source to exist. Everything exists in Krishna, and everything can come from Krishna, but Krishna doesn't need a source. So that contradicts the concept that is there in the material world, that everything has to have a source. Now, when Narad Muni presents these questions, one doubt arose in Narad Muni. And that doubt was, why, if you are independent, you create, you're the supreme, then there's one doubt, and that is, why are you performing austerity? So Narad Muni was very intelligent to pick that up. Why you perform? Because if you're superior, if you're the creator, the supreme, the source, then you should not be doing any austerity. You shouldn't be depending on anyone. You should not be calling anyone. You should be self-sufficient. So that tells me that there's maybe a doubt that you're the supreme. That maybe somebody greater than you. Is that true? And he presented that to Brahma. And Prabhupada here in this purport is making the point that Narad Muni is not blindly accepting Lord Brahma as God. Because from his activities and actions, we're noting something else. Scripture says God is all beautiful. Just using that statement, if anyone claims to be God and they're not beautiful, then that just defeats the concept or the ideology that they're God. And here, Prabhupada is warning that we should not just accept any personality. What about accepting any Tom, Dick, and Harry as God? Even accepting any spiritual superior person as God. Because God has no equal. It is a definition of God. That person who has no equal and no superior. That is God. Right. So that was just an introduction. Shamananda Prabhu says, Srila Prabhupada explained repeatedly that spiritual master and any other living entities are not God. We're never God, can never be God, are servants and representatives of God. This is a wonderful to hear. Yes, again and again, Prabhupada is reminding us because again and again people make this mistake. Prabhupada says, especially in India. And even now, it's amazing. You would think that in the 21st century, people would be thinking and they would have greater intelligence, right? To understand what is the concept of God and etc. But even today, you will find incarnations in India. One incarnation is saying he's Kali. Another incarnation is saying he's God. So even today, people are being worshipped as Krishna, the greatest, and this is the greatest obstacle. It's an irony that on one hand they have power, they have fame, they have opulence, but yet on the other is they are captured by Maya, the last snare of Maya. So the envy that people have against Krishna can manifest in many, many, many varieties of forms. By Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we have absolutely no doubt who is God. Krishna is God. And everyone else is a servant of God. Sri Mahaprabhu also made it very, very clear. Krishna is the supreme, and every other living entity is subservient. In fact, even every other incarnation, expansion of Krishna is subservient, is serving Krishna. They're serving the desires of Krishna. Krishna is just like Balaram. Chaitanya Charitamrita gives the example of Balaram. Balaram is the first expansion of Krishna. So he's not different from God. But even Balaram has Sevyaka Abhiman, has this consciousness of serving Krishna. And Krishna is the only one that has this enjoyment consciousness because Krishna is the supreme. So even expansions have the potency, the tendency of service. What to talk about the living entities? Even the living entities are expended simply for service. So when we become convinced that, yes, my goal, my position, and what's best for me is to be a servant, then naturally we fall in line with the category of energy we belong to, and we become happy. So today we're going to cover Lord Brahma's response from text 9 to text 20. So Lord Brahma first thanks Narad Muni. Then in text 10 and 11, he clarifies his position. Then from 12 to 13, he explains the bewilderment of people under Maya. And then from 14, he begins to answer. So question 1, question 2, and question 5 are answered in these verses of Bhagavatam. And we'll be expanding on that. Text 9. Brahmo vacha samyak karunik kashyedam vatsate vichikit shitam yad aham kodita somya bhagavat virya darshane. But Brahma said, my dear boy Narada, be merciful to all, including me. You have asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the Almighty Personality of God. So Narad Muni asks these questions to Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma is so happy that you've asked these questions. Why? Because now by answering these questions, I can associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm thinking about the Supreme Personality of God. So just the questioning of Narad Muni inspired Lord Brahma. We see this again and again, even when the Yamadutas, they go to Yamaraj and they present the challenge of encountering the Yamadutas. Yamaraj is very happy. Thank you for asking a question about Krishna. Krishna's Maharaj would always say, for the sannyasis, asking question is like sweet balls, like offering sweet balls. Because why? If you ask a question, then they can speak about Krishna. So this is very wonderful. Prabhupada will always encourage questions. Naturally for clarification, but ultimately it's for speaking about Krishna. So here we see Narad Muni is presenting, in essence, the Bhagavatam is giving knowledge. It's like the spiritual encyclopedia. And here we are going to be hearing about creation and the details around creation, which the scientists are trying to understand, people are trying to understand. But the knowledge that is presented is secondary. We should never forget the primary goal. We should not get caught up. Not that we should not know or we should not hear, but we should not lose focus of the goal, of why we are hearing the subject related to creation. First and foremost, because it is connected to Krishna. And we are trying to remember Krishna. Secondly, by hearing about creation, Bhagavat Virya Darshane, I am presented with Krishna's almighty power, his prowess. Creation is a manifestation of God's power. In the material world, people exhibit their power by creation, by creating things. It's like a company innovates. So innovation is said to be a mark of greatness, because by great innovations, people become wealthy. Similarly, Krishna, when we hear about his creation, it enhances our appreciation of Krishna's power, Krishna's abilities, Krishna's potencies. So in this way, hearing about creation increases our faith, and ultimately we are able to, with that faith, surrender to Krishna, because we know that Krishna is no ordinary person. And Brahma is very happy. He's inspired. They haven't even talked about Krishna. Just the questioning inspired him in spiritual life, inspired him in Krishna consciousness. So any form of connection with Krishna will inspire you. To be inspired means to be in spirit. As soon as you're in spirit, devotional spirit, Krishna conscious spirit, Bhagavatam spirit, you're in association with saintly people, then you will be inspired. You don't need any other artificial means. But Narad Muni's 6 questions, immediately Brahma was very inspired. Why? Because he's Krishna conscious. And now I'm getting Krishna conscious questions, and he's going to share. Prabhupada in the purport says, Brahmaji, being so questioned by Naradji, congratulated him. For it is usual for a devotee to become very enthusiastic whenever there are questions concerning the Almighty Personality of God. When our subject matter of discussion, when we meet, when we talk, when we come together, should only be about Krishna. Even if there is no questions about Krishna, just sharing our realizations about Krishna, sharing our realizations about Krishna consciousness, sharing pastimes about Krishna consciousness. This is very inspiring. That is the sign of a pure devotee of the Lord. So Prabhupada is giving, from Brahma we can learn that if somebody asks you a question about Krishna, if somebody shares realizations about Krishna, if somebody tells you a story, a pastime about Prabhupada, if somebody tells you something about Krishna, if somebody shares a Krishna story, and like you said, yeah, I don't know that story, liking it and something new. You want something new, or yeah, it's like there's nothing happens, there's no trigger, there's no inspiration. Then that's a sign. It can be used as a barometer, sign to dictate the health of your spiritual life. The more pure you are, anything related to Krishna will inspire you. If, for example, you hear they had a wonderful festival in this place, and they had this program, and they were chanting, and you see a Harinam party, anything related to Krishna will inspire you, because you'll be able to connect the dots. Be able to connect the dots. So that is a sign of a pure devotee. The more pure you are, anything related to Krishna will inspire. Nectar Devotion also says this is one quality of somebody in the stage of bhava. In a material, in a lower stage, not in material stage, in lower stages of devotion, it's like, let's say, take for example kirtan. In the lower stage of kirtan, lower stages of development, if there's a kirtan, and let's say the tune is not nice, they're playing off beat, and there's no rasa, you're not inspired. But if somebody is advanced, like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj would get those who are sincere to chant, even if they can't play in beat, they would still be able to relish the kirtan because of the purity. So the more pure we are, then the externals is irrelevant. Anything connected to Krishna is ecstatic. Prabhupada naturally wanted us to present Krishna consciousness in a nice, presentable, attractive way. But that was to bring people, and ultimately the purity is what counts. Such discourses on the transcendental activities of the Lord purify the atmosphere in which such discussions are held. And the devotees thus become enlivened while answering such questions. It is purifying both for the questioners and for one who answers the questions. The pure devotees are not satisfied only by knowing everything about the Lord. They are also eager to broadcast the information to others, for they want to see that the glories of the Lord are known to everyone. Now, somebody asks a question, somebody answers the question. That's wonderful. But Prabhupada is taking it even further. This aspect of taking it further, of broadcasting to others, see, this opens up a different avenue of service, a different avenue of rasa, of taste. Taste in spreading Krishna consciousness. So if one is presented with a question, and if one answers a question, there is certain rasa, there is certain taste. But this taste of spreading Krishna consciousness to others, this is even one gets even a higher taste. So it's wonderful. Prabhupada has given us his Bhaktivedanta purports to hear the question and answers, to be educated, to associate with Krishna in this way. And once we get this, we can now go out there and share it with people that don't have access to this knowledge. We're broadcasting these glories. And the material world is an ideal and perfect place for this. You will never find any shortage of materialistic souls or people who do not know about Krishna in this material world. Even if we have to preach to everyone, there will still be souls coming into this world that will need to be educated about Krishna. So in this way, the material world provides this wonderful opportunity of sharing. Devotees are eager to broadcast this knowledge. Thus, the devotee feels satisfied when such an opportunity is offered to him. This is the basic principle of missionary activities. 10. Nanritam tava tatshapi yatha mam pravipoho vignaya paramatta etavatvam yatohi me. Whatever you have spoken about me is not false. Because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my powerful activities. So Lord Brahma is responding that, yes, your doubt is not falsely based. In fact, firstly, if somebody looks at my activities, they will be bewildered. Because Lord Brahma, he's very powerful. He's creating, if you consider Lord Brahma, he just has to think and he creates. He creates through his mind. The material world, everything that's created in creation originates with a thought. It originates in the mind, a desire. There has to be a desire, there has to be a thought, there has to be contemplation on that. Thinking has to be there for anything to exist. Just like here we see computer, whatever we have around us, that originated through a desire. Now, Lord Brahma, okay, let me just first, so everything originates through a desire, but from that desire, from that thinking, there has to be, a manifestation. Energy needs to be put in, and then a product is created. So it still has to go from, let's say, a mental state to a physical form of endeavor with ingredients, with intelligence to then manifest some creation, some product. With Lord Brahma, he just thinks. And as soon as he thinks, he would say a certain mantra, he would think of some creation, and creation manifests. Because he has that potency. Krishna has given him that ability. And we're going to, when we come to the future chapters and future cantos, especially Canto 3, we're going to see how Brahma creates. It's going to be in more detail. All the aspects of creation that Brahma creates just by thinking. So that's the power. So when somebody sees that Brahma just thinks and he creates, no doubt they'll think, wow, he's supreme. So Lord Brahma is saying, yes, it seems like I'm supreme. But when you're aware of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then you'll never make that mistake. If you don't know Krishna, then you may make that mistake. But when you know the Supreme Absolute Truth, you will never make that mistake. So, Brahma is acknowledging. Prabhupada says, the frog in the well. Logic illustrates that a frog residing in the atmosphere and boundary of a well cannot imagine the length and breadth of a gigantic ocean. Such a frog, when informed of the gigantic length and breadth of the ocean, first of all, does not believe that there is such an ocean. And if someone assures him that factually there is such a thing, the frog then begins to measure it by imagination, by means of pumping its belly as far as possible. With the result that the tiny abdomen of the frog bursts and the poor frog dies without any experience of actual ocean. So Prabhupada loved this analogy, the frog in the well. Dr. Frog, sometimes they call it Dr. Frog. And his friend visits him from the ocean and says, how big is the ocean? Oh, it's vast. And the Dr. Frog puffs his belly. Is it this size? Nah. And the size? No. And eventually pops. Point is, we can never understand Krishna completely with our teeny brain. It's the amount of knowledge, the amount of qualities, pastimes, aspects of Krishna is unlimited. Therefore, it's inconceivable to, with our limited mind, to comprehend the extent of Krishna's glories. However, similarly, the materialistic scientists also want to challenge the inconceivable potency of the Lord by measuring him with their frog-like brain and their scientific achievements, but at the end, they simply die unsuccessful. Sometimes a materially powerful man is accepted as a god or incarnation of God without any knowledge of the factual God. So yes, Bhagavatam is presenting the factual Krishna, factual God. And therefore, the creation is shared so that we can understand Krishna's glories in relation to creation, a small fraction of Krishna's glories. Implication is if you meet God, that means you meet one of these bogus gods. A simple challenge is, you God, excellent. Can you create a mountain of gold for me? If they're God, they can create, because God creates his whole creation. So if you God and Bhagavatam describing creation, you'll be able to create a mountain of gold. Is nothing. Okay, don't worry about a mountain of gold. Prabhupada goes on and says you can just create one grain of rice. Just manifest one grain of rice. And this becomes a challenge. Okay, create one living entity. One unicellular living entity. If you God. So in this way, we are not fooled by the wisdom of the Bhagavatam. We are not fooled of in bogus gods, because we can understand the potency that God has. Such a material assessment may be gradually extended, and the attempt may reach to the highest limit of Brahmaji, who is the topmost living being within the universe and has a duration of life unimaginable to the material scientists. Brahma lives for 311 trillion 40 billion years. It's like, wow. Scientists would faint at hearing that. As we get information from the most authentic book of knowledge, the Bhagavad Gita, 870, Brahmaji's one day and one night is calculated to be some hundreds of thousands of years on our planet. This long duration of life may not be believed by the frog in the well, but persons who have a realization of the truths mentioned in Bhagavad Gita accept the existence of great personality who creates the variegatedness of the complete universe. It is understood from the revealed scriptures that Brahmaji of this universe is younger than all other Brahmas in charge of many, many universes beyond this. But none of them can be equal to the personality of Godhead. Our Brahmaji is the smallest. He's got 4 heads. Therefore, our universe is 4 billion miles in diameter. But there are other Brahmas that have 10 heads, 10 billion miles universe, 100 heads, 100 billion miles, 1,000,000 heads, 1,000,000 billion miles. Like, inconceivable. Unlimited numbers of universes. So the potency and the vastness of creation is inconceivable. Even what the materialists can see from with the telescopes, they know that there's unlimited number of galaxies, and now they also accepting that there's multi-universes. It's like creation is practice, like no end to this aspect of creation. As the telescopes advance, then the depth of the universe is advancing. They see more. And the more they see, the more they get bewildered. This is Krishna's creation. Naraji is one of the liberated souls. And after his liberation, he was known as Narada. Otherwise, before his liberation, he was simply a son from a servant. The questions may be asked why Naraji was not aware of the Supreme Lord, and why he misconceived Brahmaji to be the Supreme Lord, although factually he was not. A liberated soul is never bewildered by such a mistaken idea. So why did Naraji ask all those questions just like an ordinary man with profound knowledge? There was a bewilderment in Arjuna also, although he is eternally the associate of the Lord. Such bewilderment in Arjuna and Narada takes place by the will of the Lord, so that other non-liberated persons may realize the real truth and knowledge of the Lord. The doubt arising in the mind of Naraji about Brahmaji becoming all-powerful is a lesson for the frogs in the well, that they may not be bewildered in misconceiving the identity of the personality of God, and even by comparison to the personality like Brahma. What to speak of ordinary men who falsely pose themselves as God or an incarnation of God. We'll see this happening in many lives of devotees, pure devotees. Narad Muni is becoming bewildered and asking, as Prabhupada is presenting. Arjuna becoming bewildered and asking. Brahmaji himself, Lord Brahma himself becoming bewildered. So devotees or pure devotees of the Lord, by the will of the Lord, may be put into such bewilderment to ask questions for our benefit. They know the truth. But if Narad Muni didn't ask these questions, we wouldn't have this questioning and questions and answer session in the Bhagavatam. So like that, Krishna, to present the knowledge, he would then use different devotees as instruments to then present arguments, doubts, etc. And we then get the knowledge. The Supreme Lord is always the Supreme. And as we have tried to establish many times in these purports, no living being, even up to the standard of Brahma, can claim to be one with the Lord. One should not be misled when people worship a great man as God after his death as a matter of hero worship. There are many kings like Lord Ramachandra, the king of Ayodhya, but none of them are mentioned as God in the revealed scriptures. To be a good king is not necessarily the king. To be a good king is not necessarily a qualification for being Lord Ram. But to be a great personality like Krishna is the qualification for being the personality of Godhead. If we scrutinize the character who took part in the battle of Kurukshetra, we may find that Maha Yudhishthira was no less a pious king than Lord Ramachandra. But by character study, Maharaj Yudhishthira was better moralist than Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna asked Maharaj Yudhishthira to lie, but Maharaj Yudhishthira tested. But that does not mean that Maharaj Yudhishthira could be equal to Lord Ramachandra or Lord Krishna. So Prabhupada is trying to make it clear without a doubt. No living entity, no matter how powerful, how glorious, how pious, how great, how heroic, how exalted, how famous they are, no matter what mystic power they have to manifest, to create, to control, to do anything, become lighter than the lightest, become heavier than the heaviest, doesn't matter what they're able to do. They can never, ever, ever be equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are distinct in nature. One is Anu, tiny, living entity, Jiva, and the other is Vibhu, great. They can never be on equal terms at all. The great authorities have estimated Maharaj Yudhishthira to be a pious man, but they have accepted Lord Ram and Krishna as the personality of Godhead. The Lord is therefore a different identity in all circumstances. And no idea of anthropomorphism can be applied to him. The Lord is always the Lord, and a common living being can never be equal to him. So, very emphatic, very clear, Prabhupada is presenting in this purport, and Prabhupada will make this point again and again. So let's just now pause for a minute and consider the unfolding of the Bhagavatam. At each point, we mention that there is a certain psyche that needs to develop. For us to enter into Vrindavan and experience the pastimes of Vrindavan, to become qualified to enter into Krishna Lila, there's a certain development of our spiritual psyche. Here is one example of that development. The acceptance that Krishna and the living entity, one is subordinate to the other. Now, when one is convinced of that psyche, which has been established here during this discussion, then that becomes a favorable foundation to build upon the next psyche, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, until the 9th canto. And by the time 9th canto completes and the Bhagavatam 10th canto unfolds and the doors to Vrindavan opens, one is now ready. One has been preparing one's consciousness to accept Krishna. Now, we're fortunate that Prabhupada has made these points in Bhagavad Gita, in other small books, in his lectures. So it's not something new, but at the same time, it's something that cannot be overlooked. Right? It may not be new, but are we fully convinced that yes, Krishna and the living entity can never ever be equal? Even if somebody is as exalted as Maharaj Yudhishthira, Prabhupada is using him as an example that he never lied. Krishna lied. Krishna is a liar. Yudhishthira never, one never lied. His chariot rode on the ground, above the ground. That's how truthful he was. So such an exalted person, even he cannot be equated to Krishna. So we need to be fully, completely convinced. 11. So now Lord Brahma is going to answer his position, reveal his position. Yena swa rochisha vishvam rochitam rocha yam yaham yatarko gnir yatho yatha samo yatar shagrihat taraka. I create after the Lord's creation by his personal effulgence, known as the Brahma Jyoti. Just as when the sun manifests its fire, the moon, the firmament, the influence of planets, and the twinkling stars also manifest their brightness. So Lord Brahma is mentioned that I don't create independently. In fact, the Lord is there. Lord Brahma said to Narada that his impression that Brahma was not the supreme authority in the creation was correct. Sometimes less intelligent men have the foolish impression that Brahma is the cause of all causes. But Narada wanted to clear the matter by the statement of Brahmaji, the supreme authority in the universe. As the decision of the Supreme Court as a state is final, similarly, the judgment of Brahmaji, the supreme authority in the universe, is final in the Vedic process of acquiring knowledge. As we have already affirmed in the previous verse, Naraji was a liberated soul. Therefore, he was not one of the less intelligent men who accept false god or gods in their own ways. He represented himself as less intelligent and yet intelligently presented a doubt to be cleared by the supreme authority so that the uninformed might take note of it and be rightly informed about the intricacies of creation and the creator. In this verse, Brahmaji clears up the wrong impression held by the less intelligent and affirms that he creates the universal variegatedness after the material potencies are created by the glaring effulgence of Lord Shri Krishna. Brahmaji has also separately given the statement in the Brahma Samhita known as Brahma Samhita 540, where he says, Yasya prabhava pravato jagadanda koti shasheva sudha hi vibhuti binam tad brahma nishkalam ananta shesha bhutam govindamadi purusham tamaham jami. I serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, the Primal Lord, whose transcendental bodily effulgence known as the Brahma Jyoti, which is unlimited, unfathomed, and all-pervasive, is the cause of the creation of unlimited number of planets, etc., with variegated climates and conditions and specific conditions of same statements in the Bhagavad Gita 14:27. Lord Krishna is the background of the Brahma Jyoti. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. In the Nirukti of Vedic dictionary, the import of pratishta is mentioned as that which establishes. So the Brahma Jyoti is not independent or self-sufficient. Lord Shri Krishna is ultimately the creator of the Brahma Jyoti, mentioned in this verse as Swarochisha, or the effulgence of the transcendental body of the Lord. This Brahma Jyoti is all-pervading and all creation is made possible by its potent power. Therefore, the Vedic hymns declare that everything exists is being sustained by the Brahma Jyoti. Sarva alav idam Brahma. Therefore, the potent seed of all creation is the Brahma Jyoti. And the same Brahma Jyoti, unlimited and unfathomed, is established by the Lord. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna is ultimately the supreme cause of all creation, the Ham Sarvasya Prabhu. One should not accept the Lord to create like a blacksmith with a hammer and other instruments. So Lord Brahma is making the point that the Lord creates and I create everything by the potency of the Brahma Jyoti. Now you'll see here in the Vedas also, statements are made like here Prabhupada is quoting Sarvam Kalav idam Brahma. The whole material existence is maintained, created, sustained by Brahma Jyoti. Now, when you hear that statement, people conclude that Brahma Jyoti is the source of everything. And at one point, or at one specific point of understanding, that's true. But Brahma himself is very validating that. But that is just seeing from one perspective and not the complete picture. The Bhagavatam is completing the picture. Srila Prabhupada is the pure devotee, is completing the picture. The picture is, yes, that Brahma Jyoti is the source of all creation. But then the question is, where is the Brahma Jyoti coming from? That's the bodily effulgence of Krishna. So if that is the bodily effulgence of Krishna, that means the Brahma Jyoti is not independent. It does not have an existence separate to itself. So separate from Krishna. Krishna's bodily effulgence manifests the Brahma Jyoti, and therefore Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the source of Brahma Jyoti. And therefore, the source of creation is ultimately Krishna. So it's important to always go back to the original source, especially with the Vedic statements that are there in Brahmas, in Upanishads. These statements are made. And Westerners, they only study like the Upanishads, or they get knowledge from sages that only focus on a certain scripture. And then they start concluding, yes, see, source of everything is light. And if source of everything is light, then God is light. And this is how they come to this conclusion that God is light. Everything is light. Everything is energy, light. But no, that light is only a fraction of the glories of God. That light is coming from the body of God. There is more to that light than what we're hearing or seeing. And here Prabhupada is making the point, one should not accept the Lord to create like a blacksmith with hammer and other instruments. And it's like, there's God. God created, it's considered in the Bible, God created in 7 days this thing. May not know the exact points there, but it says God created and then he rested. Why would God create and then rest? It's like, he doesn't get tired. So Krishna is not, like a blacksmith working at it, creating, and then he's so exhausted. Now he's like, yeah, now I need to rest. Sure. It's been a tedious endeavor. No. Krishna doesn't create like that. Every picture of Krishna you see, he's enjoying. He's got unlimited potencies to do the work of creation. Krishna never gets his hand masked. No need to get your hands masked. He just looks, he just thinks, and creation manifests. Krishna he's got inconceivable potencies, and by his inconceivable potencies, Krishna can create, Krishna can manifest. And yes, in some cases, Krishna wants to personally get involved, and Krishna may. But no need. His potencies do everything. Prabhupada writes, continues, the Lord creates by his potencies. He has his multifarious potencies. Parasya Shaktir Vivideva Suryate. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 1365 purport. Just a small seed of a banyan fruit has the potency to create a big banyan tree. The Lord disseminates all varieties of seeds by his potent Brahma Jyoti Swarochisha. The seeds are made to develop by the watering process of persons like Brahma. Brahma cannot create the seeds, but he can manifest seeds into a tree, just as a gardener helps plants and orchids to grow by the watering process. Example cited here of the sun is very appropriate. In the material world, the sun is the cause of all illumination. Fire, electricity, rays of the moon, etc. All luminaries in the sky are creations of the sun. The sun is the creation of the Brahmajyoti, and the Brahmajyoti is the effulgence of the Lord. Thus, the ultimate cause of creation is the Lord. So, Prabhupada is giving a nice example of potency of Krishna. To appreciate Krishna's inconceivable potencies, Prabhupada is giving an example of a banyan seed. In that small banyan seed, now if you have actually seen a banyan tree, go to a botanical garden in Durban, I think even in Joburg, but specifically in Durban, they have this banyan tree, and at Durban Temple also there's there, and you see how these banyan tree has its branches going up and then coming down, becoming new trunks, and in this way it can extend itself without you knowing where's the beginning and where's the end. But that banyan tree can come from a simple seed. So in that seed, the potency, or you could say the tree, the whole tree is in there in a potent form, and it can manifest. Srila Bhakti Charumaj would love to use this example to illustrate self-sufficiency and the power, the potency of God. Like if you take an apple seed, in an apple seed, there's apple tree. And on that apple tree, there are many apples that would manifest. And in each apple, there are many seeds. And in that seed, there are many trees. Or in that seed, there's a tree. In all those seeds, there's a tree. And from that tree, many apples are manifested. And in this way, you can practically go infinitely, no end. That's Krishna's potency. So gives us an idea of this person called Krishna. And he has multifarious potencies, inconceivable different potencies. So he's no ordinary person. He's very powerful. What makes him powerful? He's got powerful energies. He's got powerful potencies. And that's the person we are surrendering to. We are surrendering to some person. We are surrendering that personality who has many, many wonderful, inconceivable, infinite number of potencies. 12. Tasme namo bhagavate vasudevaya dhimahi yanmayaya durjayaya mam vidanti jagat gurum. So now Lord Brahma, he is offering his obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narad Muni had presented some questions, needed some clarification of, are you supreme? Lord Brahma makes it very clear, I ain't the supreme. In fact, I'm simply creating. I'm a secondary creator. Primary creator is the Supreme Personality of God and in his potencies. And now, in order to establish who is that Supreme Creator, here now Lord Brahma is saying, Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi. So again, we'll see like this, these verses that come up throughout the Bhagavatam confirming who is the Supreme. Without doubts. Lord Brahma says, I offer my obeisances and meditate upon Lord Krishna Vasudeva. See, he's meditating on the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna, son of Vasudeva. the personality of Godhead whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent men, class of men, to call me supreme controller. So it's an interesting prayer. I offer my obeisance to Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, Vasudev. By his potency, people think I'm great. I'm God. I'm the supreme controller. So in one verse, he's establishing who's God. He's establishing why those who are foolish claim that Lord Brahma is the supreme, and how by the potency of Maya, which belong to Krishna, these living entities are bewildered. So he's clearly establishing his position. I'm simply an instrument. I'm simply doing the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Prabhupada in the purport says, as will be more clearly explained in the next verse, the illusory potency of the Lord bewilders the less intelligent to accept Brahmaji, or for that matter, any other person, as a Supreme Lord. Brahmaji, however, refuses to be called this, and he directly offers his respectful obeisances unto Lord Vasudeva, or Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, as he has already offered the same respect to him in the Brahma Samhita 5.1. Ishwara Parama Krishna, Sachidananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karana. Supreme Lord is the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, the primal Lord in his transcendental body, the ultimate cause of all causes. I worship that primal Lord. So no doubt, Brahma is establishing Krishna as the supreme personality of God. The ultimate, that original candle is Krishna. And Prabhupada makes the point, we read in last week's purport also, here we see the example of Lord Brahma. Narad Muni is saying, it seems like you're the supreme, you God. And immediately Brahma establishes, no, not God. Krishna is God. And Prabhupada makes it that this is the duty of a bona fide spiritual master. This is no bona fide guru, no bona fide servant of God, no bona fide teacher would accept his disciples, or anyone for that matter of fact, claiming that they're God. You find it's interesting. Many so-called incarnations that are there in this world and in the history of the world. Like there's one incarnation, he's now no more existing. He's no more an incarnation now. He's a dead incarnation. So there's one dead incarnation. They call him God. And then they worship him as God. And then when they ask him, are you God? He says, no, I'm not God, but my disciples call me God. And that's it. And he accepts, they can call me God. So that's foolish. That's foolish. And here we see in the Bhagavatam, the example of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is being called God by Narada Muni. And Lord Brahma emphatically says, no, I'm not God. You should not call me God. I'm actually a servant of God. God is actually Krishna. Prabhupada, when they called him God, he got very, very upset. He chastised them. And that's one of the diseases in Kali Yuga that can infiltrate into societies, into people who are very powerful. At work, somebody comes, your friends come at work and say, you're the CEO. Sorry, I'm not the CEO. If you start claiming to be CEO and acting like the CEO, you get fired immediately. See? So you can't just take Krishna's position. That position, unfortunately, and many others, even for example, what to talk about, Krishna's position, even Krishna's exalted positions that his servants have, like Mother Yashoda. You cannot take, you can't say Amade Shoda. Madri is sharing that Pondrak tried. In Krishna book, we hear the story of Pondrak. Some souls, and this is also in Vaikuntha, they are given liberation. One of the Sarupya, one of the liberations that of the 5 types of liberation one can get is having the same form of God, same bodily features. So Pondrak, he was given, when he was born, he had the same features of Krishna. And unfortunately, he had demonic nature, and he started claiming to be Krishna. And he started propagating that Krishna is the cheater. And he started convincing everybody that he's the right God, he's the real Krishna, he's the right God. And eventually he came to Krishna and said, "You imposter, give my Sudarshan Chakra back." Krishna said, "No problem. Yeah, catch." He couldn't catch. His head got chopped off. So, yeah, that's what happens. You want to be an imposter, you will meet your end. You'll pay the price. So, yes, we should be convinced I'm not God. Now, we could extend this a little further into our own psyche. There are personalities like Pondrak, Vibhikishan, when Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was present. So there are personalities like that go to the extent to say we God, because they have some power and potencies. Now, we don't have, or at least I can speak for myself. So I don't have any power potencies. But I may still have the psyche of thinking I'm Krishna. And what is that? I think I am the doer. I think I am the creator. I think I am the enjoyer. This Bhaktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Bhagavad Gita is emphatically saying the only Bhakta, the only enjoyer is Krishna. So in this way, we may also have the psyche of I am God. And by associating with the Bhagavatam, even that psyche, Nasta Prayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, even that psyche can be removed, purified. So as we associate with Srimad Bhagavatam, as we engage in devotional service, as we chant Hare Krishna, then all these anarthas, layers of inappropriate psyche, inappropriate thinking, inappropriate attitudes will slowly become eradicated. We'll become fully convinced. We can link this also to Sukadeva Goswami's response. Sukadeva Maj Parikshit asked the question of creation to Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami, he presented the dialogue, the question and answer of Narada and Brahma. He was acting as a postman delivering the truth, never presenting himself as independent of the previous acharyas. So like that, we also should cultivate the attitude of never being separated or never presenting ourselves as separate from the disciplic succession, separate from Srila Prabhupada. We need to always be dependent and sheltered under Srila Prabhupada, under disciplic succession. In that way, we will be completely protected and we know where we stand. Otherwise, if we start, it's like we can take Prabhupada's knowledge and we can create our own movement, completely independent, completely separate. And not that we can't do that, we can still do that, but still be dependent under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada. But you can completely deviate and take the knowledge, create your own movement, totally dislocate yourself, disassociate yourself from Prabhupada. And now you are presenting the knowledge that Prabhupada is giving, claiming, I am the source. So like that also, you get different deviations, different manifestations of this psyche of wanting to be God. Brahmaji is conscious of his actual position, and he knows how less intelligent persons, bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord, whimsically accept anyone and everyone as God. A responsible personality like Brahmaji refuses to be addressed as the Supreme Lord by his disciples or subordinates, but foolish persons praised by the men of the nature of dogs, hogs, camels, and asses feels flattered to be addressed as the Supreme Lord. Why such persons take pleasure in being addressed as God, or why such persons are addressed as God by foolishly admirers, is explained in the following verse. Vilajamanaya yasya statum ikshapate muya vimoita vikatante mamaham iti diya. The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence. Being ashamed of her position, but those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of it. In thoughts of it is I and it is mine. Durga, the material potency, she would never come in front of Krishna. She feels so embarrassed. By her potency, she's bewildering so many living entities. She feels embarrassed. She goes behind. She stands behind. But she makes people stand in front and boldly claim, I am God. It is I, it is mine. She has that power. She has that potency. The invincible, powerful, deluding energy of the personality of Godhead, or the third energy, representing Nishans, can bewilder the entire world of animation. But still, she is not strong enough to be able to stand in front of the Supreme Lord. Nishans is behind the personality of Godhead, where she is powerful enough to mislead the living beings, and the primary symptoms of the bewildered person is that they talk nonsense. Nonsensical talks are not supported by the principles of the Vedic literatures. First grade of nonsense talk is, it is I, it is mine. We find this in modern circles. It's my origination, it's my creation, it's I who created this method. This is all Maya's bewilderment. Prabhupada didn't come and say, I created the process of Krishna consciousness. No. I'm simply repeating what my Guru Maharaj gave. It's not like they are independent creators. But those who are under the illusion of material energy, they will present, yes, it is I. It's my formula. It's my creation, my framework, my model. I am it. The godless civilization is exclusively conducted by such false ideas. And such persons without any factual realization of God accept a false God or falsely declare themselves to be God to mislead persons who are already bewildered by the deluding energy. Those who are deaf, those who are before the Lord, however, who surrender unto him cannot be influenced by the deluding energy. Therefore, they are free from the misconception of it is I, it is mine. And therefore, they do not accept a false God or pose themselves as equal to the Supreme Lord. Identification of the bewildered person is distinctly given. 14. So now, after establishing, after Lord Brahma has established very emphatically how he's the secondary creator, Krishna is the primary creator, Krishna's potencies are there, and the material energy influence the bewilders people, and because they are bewildered by the external energy of Krishna, they talk nonsense, and they establish themselves as to be God. I emphatically am not bewildered, and I accept I'm a servant of Krishna. Krishna is the supreme creator. So after establishing that, now Brahma is going to answer the questions on creation. So the first question that Narad Muni asked was Yat Rupam. So this text 14 is answering that question, the symptoms of the universe. Dravyam karma cha kalascha swabhava jiva evacha vasudevat paro brahman na chan yoratosti tattvataha. The 5 elementary ingredients of creation, the interaction thereof set up by eternal time, and the intuition or nature of individual living beings are differentiated parts and parcels of the personality of God at Vasudeva. And in truth, there is no other value in them. So very wonderful. Now Brahma is establishing the, you could say that the symptoms, the summary that's involved in creation. And over the next verses, chapters, this will be clarified more and more. This phenomenal world is impersonally the representation of Vasudeva, because the ingredients of its creation, the interaction, and the enjoyer of the resultant action, the living being, are all produced by the external and internal energies of the Lord, internal energies of Lord Krishna. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7, 4, and 5. Chapter 7, verse 4 and 5. The ingredients, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, as well as the conception of material identity, intelligence, and the mind, are produced by the external energy of the Lord. A living entity who enjoys the interaction of the above gross and subtle ingredients as set up by eternal time is an offshoot of the internal potency, with freedom to remain either in the material world or spiritual world. In the material world, the living entity is enticed by deluding missions. But in the spiritual world, he is in a normal condition of spiritual existence without any delusion. So there are different aspects of creation. We know the material world is there, but it's different elements. But the living entity is also there. And when one sees creation, there is matter and there is the living entity. Like if we look at this body, it's also part of this creation. But there is an energy which is in this body, which cannot be directly seen, but is perceived by its symptoms of consciousness. That conscious energy is not part of the material energy. Robert says that energy That conscious being is actually an offshoot of the internal potency. And that living entity who's part of the internal potency has the ability, has the freedom, has the independence to either remain in the material world or spiritual world. So that internal potency is actually marginal compared to the material world, which is external. So generally, Prabhupada would categorize, and the Vedas categorize Krishna's energies in three: internal, external, and marginal. The material world, external. The living entity, marginal. Because he has the ability, the living entity has the ability, has the independence to associate with either. He can decide where he wants to be. So, in essence, it is not the material energy that's keeping us in this world. It is simply our desire of where we want to be. If we want to stay in the material world, we'll stay. If you want to stay in the spiritual world, we'll stay. So, we simply have to change our desire by association. And in this way, we can associate with the internal potency and become free from the condition, the influence of the external potency. The living entity is known as marginal potency of the Lord. But in all circumstances, neither the material and ingredients nor the spiritual parts and parcel are independent of the personality of God at Vasudeva. For all of them, whether products of external, internal, or marginal potency of the Lord, are simply displays of the same effulgence of the Lord, just as light, heat, and smoke are displays of fire. None of them is separate from the fire. All of them combine together to be called fire. Similarly, all phenomenal manifestations, such as the effulgence of the body of Vasudeva, as well as the effulgence of the body of Vasudeva, are his impersonal feature, where he externally exists, where he eternally exists in his transcendental form called Satchidananda Vigraha, from Samhita 5.1, distinct from all conceptions of the material ingredients mentioned above. So the point that Prabhupada is establishing from this verse is that all expansions of the material creation is an impersonal manifestation of Krishna. Krishna is the personality of Godhead. His effulgence is a manifestation of his impersonal energy. That then gets extended further in creation. So creation is really the impersonal manifestation of Krishna. Krishna and the spiritual world is the personal manifestation of Krishna. The material world and its manifestation is the impersonal manifestation of Krishna. In the spiritual world, everything is conscious, everything is personality. The material world, everything is unconscious. Matter and everything is unconscious. The only conscious aspect is the living entity, the holy name, and Krishna's manifestation. 15. So here also Lord Brahma continues to answer question 2 and question 5. What is the basis? What is the creation dependent on? And what is the basis of that dependence? So Lord Brahma says, Narayana Paraveda Deva Narayana Gaja, Narayana Paraloka, Narayana Paramukha. The Vedic literatures are made by and are meant for the Supreme Lord. The demigods are also meant for serving the Lord as parts of his body. The different planets are also meant for the sake of the Lord, and the different sacrifices are performed just to please him. So everything that exists, every expansion is meant for pleasing Krishna. In the Vedas, it is explained that God was one, but he expanded in many simply for the purpose of enjoyment. So here we see this point established by Lord Brahma, that everything that exists, whether it's creation, whether it's the demigods, whether it's sacrifices, the planets and all its different variegatedness, everything that exists is for Krishna's pleasure. That's all. And this is Krishna consciousness. We're meant to use everything. We're meant to offer all that exists for the pleasure of Krishna. And you can only do this when there is love. When you love someone, you want to do everything for them. According to Vedanta Sutra, Shastra Yonitvat, the Supreme Lord is the author of all revealed scriptures, and all revealed scriptures are for knowing the Supreme Lord. Veda means knowledge that leads to the Lord. It's a nice definition of Veda. Generally, we say Veda means the body of knowledge. Veda means knowledge. But here, Prabhupada giving a nice sutra. Veda means knowledge that leads to the Lord. So it's not just independent knowledge, the Vedic knowledge. It's because, again, the tendency, the Vedic knowledge is there. So I want to become I want to study astrology from the Vedas. I want to study Ayurveda from the Vedas. I want to study this, yoga and this Shastra and that Shastra. So I want to study all this knowledge. Why? So that I can be recognized as intelligent, as knowledgeable, as famous. It is all my doing and my knowledge and my expertise. The same disease that Lord Brahma is establishing in the previous verse. That's I and mine. In order for that not to happen, probably saying Veda means knowledge that leads to the Lord. If you embracing knowledge and it's taking you away, that is knowledge under ignorance. Sri Upanishad talks about those who are in ignorance will go to hell. Those who are in knowledge and exploiting that knowledge, they go lower than hell. So real knowledge, true knowledge, is really that knowledge that leads you to the Lord. The Vedas are made just to revive the forgotten consciousness of the conditioned souls. And any literature not meant for reviving God consciousness is rejected at once by the Narayana Para devotees. Such deluding books of knowledge, not having Narayan as their aim, are not at all knowledge, but are the playgrounds for crows who are interested in the rejected refuse of the world. So we heard this in the first canto. Sees knowledge separated from Krishna. Any knowledge that does not take us to Krishna, any knowledge that does not bring us closer to Krishna, that is garbage of the world. It's a playground for the crows, because the swans will only go for knowledge that enhances their relationship with Krishna. Otherwise, everything is refuse. Any book of knowledge, science or art must lead to the knowledge of Narayan. Otherwise, it must be rejected. That is the way of advancement of knowledge. The supreme worshipful deity is Narayan. Demigods are recommended secondarily for worship in relation to Narayan because the demigods are assisting hands in the management of the universal affairs. As the officers of a kingdom are respected due to their relation to the king, the demigods are worshipped due to their relation to the Lord. Without the Lord's relation, worship of the demigods is unauthorized, avidi purvakam, just as it is improper to water the leaves and branches of a tree without watering its roots. Therefore, the demigods are also dependent on Narayan. The lokas, or different planets, are attractive because they have different varieties of life and bliss partially representing Sachidanand Vigraha. Everyone wants an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. In the material world, such an eternal life of bliss and knowledge is progressively realized in the upper planets. But after reaching there, one is inclined to achieve further progress along the path of Godhead. Duration of life with a proportionate quantity of bliss and knowledge may be increased from one planet to another. One can increase the duration of life to thousands and hundreds of thousands of years in different planets, but nowhere is there eternal life. But one can reach the highest planet, that of Brahma, can inspire to reach the planets in the spiritual sky, where life is eternal. Therefore, the progressive journey from one planet to another culminates in reaching the supreme planet of the Lord, Madhyama, where life is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss. All different kinds of sacrifices are performed just to satisfy the Lord Narayan, with a view to reaching him. The best sacrifice recommended in this age of Kali is Sankirtan Yajna, mainstay of devotional service of a Narayan Paraya devotee. So the center is Narayan. Now, what's interesting, another point that Prabhupada was making in a lecture, so interesting. Prabhupada is talking about Lord Ram and Vishnu, Narayan. In Krishna consciousness, our focus is Krishna, 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 Krishna. But Prabhupada says that doesn't mean we're not interested in Ram, 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 Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. No, that separation can never be there. And Prabhupada made a nice, interesting point to establish that. Prabhupada says, and this is by Lord Shiva tell Parvati, which is there in the Vedas, quoting the Vedic scriptures, that one name of Krishna is equivalent to 3 names of Ram. So when we say Krishna, 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 we actually glorify the Lord Ram 3 times, or 3 plus 3 plus 3. By saying Krishna, Krishna. If we say Krishna once, we are really glorifying Lord Ram 3 times. And one name of Lord Ram is 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. So therefore, like that, if we now saying Krishna, 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 we're also glorifying all the names of Vishnu, many, many thousand times, glorifying Narayan. So in this way, there is never separation. It's just that we glorifying Krishna because that way we glorify all the manifestations of Krishna, automatically included. Lord Ram, Narayan, all the expansions, all included, just by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So someone who's really chanting Hare Krishna, he's technically glorifying the other personalities, even more than just if he had to directly glorify those personalities. This is the wonderful process of glorifying Krishna. Then Lord Brahma continues, Narayana paro yogo, Narayana param tapa, Narayanam param gnanam, Narayana paragati. All different types of meditation or mysticism are means for realizing Narayan. All austerities are aimed at achieving Narayan. culture of transcendental knowledge is for the getting a glimpse of Narayan. And ultimately, salvation is entering the kingdom of. In meditation, there are two systems of yoga, namely Astanga Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. Astanga Yoga is practice in concentrating the mind, releasing oneself from all engagements by a regulated process of meditation, concentration, sitting posture, blocking the movement of internal circulation of air, etc. Sankhya Yoga is meant to distinguish the truth from the ephemerals. But ultimately, both systems are meant for realizing the impersonal Brahman, which is but a partial representation of Narayan, the Supreme Personality of God. As we have explained before, the impersonal Brahman effulgence is only a part of the personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman is situated on the person of the personality of Godhead. And as such, Brahman is glorification of the personality of God. This is confirmed both in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Matsya Purana. Gati refers to the ultimate destination and the last word in liberation. Oneness with the impersonal Brahma Jyoti is not the ultimate liberation. Superior to that is the sublime association of the personality of Godhead in one of the innumerable spiritual planets in the Vaikuntha sky. Therefore, the conclusion is that Narayan, or the personality of Godhead, is the ultimate destination of all kinds of yoga systems as well as all kinds of liberation. 17. So now, after establishing the basis, the dependency is Narayan for everything. Now, Lord Brahma is going to share about the creation and his relation with the creation. Tasyapi drishtur ishasya kutastasya kilat mana shrijam shrijami shrushtoham iksha yeva vichodita. Inspired by him only, I discover what is already created by him, Narayan, under his vision as the all-pervading supersoul, and I am also created by him only. So he is the basis, he's the substance, I'm created by him, and he then gives me the vision, empowerment to then create further. Even Brahma, the creator of the universe, admits that he is not the actual creator, but is simply inspired by Lord Narayan, and therefore creates under his superintendence those things already created by him, the super soul of all living entities. Two identities of the soul. The super soul and individual soul are admitted to be in the living entity, even by the greatest authority of the universe. The super soul is the Supreme Lord and the personality of Godhead, whereas the super soul is the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, whereas the individual soul is the eternal servant of the Lord. The Lord inspires the individual soul to create whatever is already created by the Lord. The Lord inspires the individual soul to create what is already created by the Lord, and by the good will of the Lord, a discoverer of something in the world is accredited as a discoverer. It is said that Columbus discovered the Western Hemisphere, but actually the tract of land was not created by Columbus. The vast tract of land was already there by the omnipotency of the Supreme Lord. And Columbus, by the dint of his past service unto the Lord, was blessed with the credit of discovering America. Similarly, no one can create anything without the sanction of the Lord, since everyone sees according to his ability. So very, very wonderful. Brahma's presenting his example, his truth, that I am a second creator. In fact, I also just create and manifest what's already been created. The blueprint, everything's already there. I'm just an instrument. So it's a wonderful way to see ourselves not separate from Krishna, but very much connected to Krishna. Whatever potency we have, whatever abilities we have, whatever we can discover in creation, like inventors, they can discover so many things. They're not discovering that independently. We may say Newton's third law, Newton's law of gravity, Newton's this law, Newton's that law. We may call different laws after the scientists, but actually it's not their laws. The laws are already there. They just discovered it. And how did they discover it? Krishna inspired them to discover. Why? You're probably saying due to their past service. They are blessed. So whatever abilities, whatever potencies, whatever wealth, glory, fame we get is simply coming from Krishna. And we take that and offer it again to Krishna. We see how Srila Prabhupada was receiving so much opulence as he was serving the Supreme Lord. And he was taking all that opulence and offering the Lord those opulences again. This is the perfect cycle. Never claiming, never being independent. So this is safety. This is the safest position. Whatever I'm able to do, it's all the mercy of Guru and Krishna, all the mercy of the Lord. I'm simply an instrument. The Lord is giving me due to my past service. Lord is giving me more. I simply have to offer it back to his lotus feet. And this way, I will be safe in my position as a servant of Krishna. This ability is also awarded by the Lord according to one's willingness to render service unto the Lord. One must therefore be voluntarily willing to render service unto the Lord. And thus the Lord will empower the doer in proportion to his surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. So if we want to be empowered, if we want to be able to do something tangible for Srila Prabhupada's movement, and this is the secret. Voluntarily be willing to render service to the Lord. That means whatever comes our way, offer it back to Krishna. Because that is what a servant does. Consider a maidservant in the house of a wealthy man. Somebody knocks on the door. They open the door. The maidservant goes. She receives the person. She opens the door. And let's say the person at the door delivers a box of mangoes and says, here's a box of mangoes for the owner. She's taking the box of mangoes. The maidservant takes the box of mangoes. She doesn't claim it to be hers. She goes and puts it in the kitchen because it's the master's. So like that, we simply have to become maidservants, accepting the resources, accepting all the energies, all the opulence of all the services even that's been offered, and we offered that back to the Supreme Lord. This is the safest position to be. And when Krishna sees that one is doing that, then Krishna can engage one, make one a better instrument. But Brahma is a great devotee of the Lord, and therefore he has been empowered or inspired by the Lord to create such a universe as the one manifested before us. The Lord also inspired Arjuna to fight in the field of Kurukshetra as follows: Tasmat tvam utishta yasho labaswa jitva satrum ukshyasva rajyam samudram mayayvate nihata purvam eva nimita matrena bhava savya sachin. The battle of Kurukshetra or any other battle at any place and at any time is made by the will of the Lord. For no one can arrange such a mass annihilation without sanction of the Lord. The party of Duryodhana insulted Draupadi, a great devotee of Krishna, and she appealed to the Lord as well as to all the silent observers of this unwarranted insult. Arjuna was then advised by the Lord to fight and take credit. Otherwise, the party of Duryodhana would be killed anyway by the will of the Lord. So Arjuna was advised just to become the agent and take credit for killing the great generals like Bhishma and Karna. The Vedic writings, such as the Katha Upanishad, Lord is described as Sarva Bhuta, Sarva Bhuta Antaratma, or the personality of Godhead who resides in everyone's body and who directs everyone for one who is a soul surrendered unto him. Therefore, those who are not surrendered souls are put under the care of the material nature. Brahmanya Sarva Bhutani Yantra Maya, 1861. Therefore, they are allowed to do things on their own account and suffer the consequences themselves. Devotees like Brahma and Arjuna do not do anything on their own account, but as fully surrendered souls, they always await indication from the Lord. Therefore, they attempt to do something which appears very wonderful to ordinary vision. One of the Lord's name is Urukrama, or one whose actions are very wonderful and are beyond the imagination of living being. So the actions of his devotee sometimes appear very wonderful due to the direction of the Lord, beginning from Brahma, the topmost living entity, within the universe down to the smallest, and every living entity's intelligence is overseen by the Lord in his transcendental position as a witness of all actions. The subtle presence of the Lord is felt by the intelligent man who can study the psyche effects of thinking, feeling, and willing. So yes, Krishna is very much there, the super soul, inspiring, guiding. Just like we have like a crack on a wall, and the ants they walk at a certain path on this crack, and they have holes where they go in, they build their homes. And it's amazing how the ants will, just like at during certain weather periods, they'll come out, otherwise they'll go in. Now when they're going in, they're doing something, and then somehow everybody gets the news, time to go out, it's time to work. They get, they're all out and they're starting to walk and do their thing, and you'll see, like very synchronized. It's like there's some sort of communication, there's no chaos. So who is giving them the direction that there's no chaos? Or the other example is given when there's a swamp, like in Mayapur, India, when you go, there's a swamp of mosquitoes. And, they're all flying, but none of them crash into each other. So who's giving them the intelligence that they don't crash? That intelligence is the super soul question. Similarly, all our abilities, all our potencies that we're able to offer in service is ultimately coming from the Supreme Lord. 18. Sattvam rajas tama iti nirgunasya gunatraya stiti sarga nirodeshu grita mayaya vivo. The Supreme Lord is pure spiritual form, transcendental to all material qualities. Yet, for the sake of creation of the material world and its maintenance and annihilation, he accepts through his external energies the material modes of nature called goodness, passion, and ignorance. So now we're getting to hear the aspects of creation in the involvement of the modes of material nature. The Supreme Lord is the master of the external energy manifested by the three material modes, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. As the master of his energy, he is ever unaffected by the influence of such bewildering energy. The living entities, the jivas, however, are affected by or susceptible to the influence of such modes of material nature. That is the difference between the Lord and the living entities. The living entities are subject to those qualities, although originally the living entities are qualitatively one with the Lord. In other words, modes of nature, being products of the energy of the Lord, are certainly connected with the Lord. But the connection is just like that between the master and the servant. The Supreme Lord is the controller of the material energy, whereas the living entities who are entangled in the material worlds are neither masters nor controllers. Rather, they become subordinate to or controlled by such energy. Factually, the Lord is eternally manifested by his internal potency or spiritual energy, just like the sun and its sun rays in the clear sky. But at times, he creates the material energy, and but at times he creates a material energy as the sun creates a cloud in the clear sky. As the sun is ever increasingly unaffected by a spot of cloud, so also the unlimited Lord is unaffected by the spot of material energy manifests at times in the unlimited span of the Lord's rays of Brahmajyoti. So Krishna is always independent, never affected by the material energy. The material energy composed of three modes of nature will influence and control the living entities, but never the Supreme Lord. So when Krishna even appears in this world, Krishna never ever is controlled by the material energy. Just as the sun creates the clouds, by the potency of the sun, clouds are created. The sun evaporates the water and as condensation, clouds are created. So the sun creates the clouds, but the clouds are never able to cover the sun. Similarly, Krishna creates the material energy, and the material energy can never cover Krishna. Karya karanam kartritve dravya jnana kriyashrayam bandhanti nityada muktam mayinam purusham guna. These three modes of material nature being further manifested as matter, knowledge, and activities, put the eternal transcendental living entity under conditions of cause and effect and make him responsible for such activities. So now we're going to the nitty-gritty details, and next week we'll explain and elaborate on these. Because they are between the internal and external potencies, the eternally transcendental living entities are called marginal potency of the Lord. Factually, living entities are not meant to be so conditioned by the material energy, but due to their being affected by the false sense of lording it over the material energy, they come under the influence of such potency and thus become conditioned by the three modes of material nature. This external energy of the Lord covers the pure knowledge of the living entities, eternally existing with him. But the covering is so constant that it appears that the conditioned souls are eternally ignorant. Such is the wonderful action of Maya, or the eternal energy, manifested as if materially produced. By the covering power of the material energy, the material scientists cannot look beyond the material causes. But factually, behind the material manifestations, there are Adibhuta, Adhyatma, and Adeva actions, which the conditioned souls in the mode of ignorance cannot see. The Adibhuta manifestation entails repetition of birth and death with old age and disease. The Adhyatma manifestation conditions the spirit soul, and the Adideva manifestation is the controlling system. So there's the material aspect, there's the controlling aspect, and then there's the elements. So Adi Deva, the controlling manifestation, the demigods. Then there's the Adhyatmak, the spirit soul, mind, body. And then there's the other Bhuta, Adibhuta, the elements or living entities, the environment, etc., influencing. These are the material manifestations of cause and effect, and the sense of responsibility for the conditioned actors. They are, after all, manifestations of the conditioned state. And human beings' freedom from such a conditioned state is the highest perfectional attainment. So these are also classified in terms of the different suffering that's there. Adidevic, adibhotic, adiatmic suffering is there. It's also in relation to the creation. The highest perfection of life, as Prabhupada is mentioning here, is to become free from this influence. So the living entity is caught up in this conditioning due to creation, due to its own desire and misuse of independence. Now, by understanding our position in relation to Krishna as servants, and then understanding that I'm to become a servant, voluntarily becoming a servant, one then now becomes empowered, protected, and become free eventually from these influences. 20. Sa esha Bhagavalingais Tri Bir Eter Adokshajam Swalakshita Gatir Brahman Sarvesham Mama Chashvara. O Brahma, O Brahman Narada, the superseer, the transcendent Lord, is beyond the perception of the material senses of the living entities because of the above mentioned three modes of nature. But he is the controller of everyone, including me. In Bhagavad Gita 7:24-25, the Lord has declared very clearly that the impersonalists who give more importance to the transcendental rays of the Lord as Brahma Jyoti, and who conclude that the absolute truth is ultimately impersonal and only manifests the form at a necessary as a time of necessity, is less intelligent than the personalists, however much the impersonalists may be engaged in studying the Vedanta. The fact is that such impersonalists are covered by the above mentioned three modes of nature, material nature, and therefore they are unable to approach the transcendental personality of God. The Lord is not approachable by everyone because he is curtained by his Yogamaya potency. But one should not wrongly conclude that the Lord has formally unmanifested, was formally unmanifested, and now has now manifested himself in the human form. This misconception of the formless of the Supreme Personality of God is due to the Yogamaya curtain of the Lord and can be removed only by the Supreme Will, as the conditioned soul surrenders unto him. Devotees of the Lord are transcendental to the above mentioned three modes of material nature, can see the all blissful transcendental form of the Lord with their vision of love in the attitude of pure devotional service. So we'll see again and again this point coming up. It is only by devotional service, Bhaktya Maham Abhijanati. Only by a devotional service, Krishna says, you can see him as I am, standing before you. And that is what the Bhagavatam is propounding. That we need to cultivate the sentiment of love, sentiment of service, sentiment of devotion. Because with that, we'll be able to then see, Krishna will unveil, remove the veil that's blocking us from seeing him. But Krishna will not just do that whimsically. He will only do that to those who have cultivated this attitude of pure devotional service. And that brings us to the end of these sections of the verses. We started hearing Lord Brahma appreciating Narad's question, congratulating him. Very inspiring that you're asking these questions, because now we can speak about Krishna and we can see he's spoken about the Supreme Lord. He's spoken about the energies of the Lord, spoken about the Supreme Lord, his position. So very wonderful. And next week, we're going to now go into more details. And with what was shared from 17 to 20, we'll share nice diagram and try to expand on the creation, which Lord Brahma is going to start from 21 to 31, explaining about the creation. So we'll get a glimpse of this aspect of creation. And ultimately, we know that the creation is not founded on an impersonal basis, but really ultimately it's based on a personal feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It may be manifested as impersonal, but the foundation, the basis is the personality of Godhead. And the material energy is extremely powerful. It overpowers and controls the living entity who's actually a superior energy. This is the irony. Matter on its own is inanimate, but yet this potency of external energy overpowers a superior energy that is trying to exploit the inferior energy. And the Bhagavatam is trying to purify our consciousness so that we can come out of this exploitative mentality. And in this way, by surrendering to the Supreme Lord, we will ultimately return back to our nature of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. Vantaraj Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gokhranande Hari Hari. Any questions for Kevin? Any questions or comments anyone has? Mother Lesh says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful Krishna Katha. In the example where Yudhishthira Maharaj's chariot never touched the ground, is it also true that 1 foot of Krishna never touches the ground, although it appears to exclusive or excluding Vrindavan? Is it true that 1 foot of Krishna never touches the ground? We'll need to find the reference of that. It will be interesting. Yes, there may be some reference. So if anybody has any reference to that, let's search that. So here the point is when Krishna is walking, is it also true that 1 foot of Krishna never touches the ground? So when Krishna is walking, there's obviously footprints in Vrindavan. So that's why you may say it's excluding in Vrindavan, because in Vrindavan, Krishna's both footprints are there. In other places, maybe it's special, yes. So yeah, if you have any lecture or any reference in relation to that, please share that. Like that, Krishna is unlimited. So I may also not have heard everything, definitely not heard everything. One devotee came to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, Krishna, he's like, can't understand Krishna. Prabhupada said, that's good. Because Krishna is unlimited. Even Krishna can understand his limits. So yeah, that'll be nice. If we so here's the beauty part, right? If you find that reference or anybody else find a reference, then that just enhanced our appreciation or knowledge of Krishna. For example, many devotees, they would look at Srila Prabhupada and they would see Srila Prabhupada would be gliding. He's not walking. One devotee shares a memory. Prabhupada was coming from the plane at the airport, and he was on this escalator. And they offered so Prabhupada's coming, and you'll start seeing Prabhupada's face. So then they all offered obeisances. And then the escalator comes to the ground. So Prabhupada, as soon as he came off the escalator, she noticed that he was just like gliding. He wasn't even walking. He wasn't even touching the ground. And many devotees have seen like that. Another devotee, she shares how they were welcoming Srila Prabhupada in an auditorium. And it was crowded. And it so happened that as Prabhupada entered the crowd, she got pushed. and she fell in front of Srila Prabhupada, like her hands were, right in front. And the timing was that as soon as she fell, Prabhupada was walking and happened to step on her hand. But when Prabhupada stepped on her hand, she never felt the weight of Srila Prabhupada. She said Prabhupada was so light. It's like feather light. The problem was that when Prabhupada carried on walking after her, the servant was also behind. So the servant also trembled her hand. And she said that was painful. So that was a clear, she could understand. Yes, Prabhupada was no ordinary person. So like that. Krishna may also be interesting to see how he's walking. Second question. Krishna is the only enjoyer. In his two-handed form, he carries a flute. So it's easy to see in this form. In the four-handed form of Krishna, we see conch, club, lotus, flower, chakra. When does he use the four-arm form? What is the specific purpose of this four-handed manifestation? So that is the Vishnu form. So in Vaikuntha, that's the form Krishna has. And Super Soul has that form, also Vishnu form. So as a Super Soul, he uses that form. In Vaikuntha, he uses that form. And Krishna also uses that form in Dwarka. He can manifest that form to kill the demons. So Krishna's two-arm form is always in Vrindavan. Krishna's four-arm form is manifested outside Vrindavan. All right, thank you. Sangeeta, thank you very much. Shamananda Prabhu says, wonderful class. Thank you very much for taking us through these verses. Ashiti says, Hare Krishna, thank you so much for sharing valuable knowledge and your time. Thank you very much for everyone's presence and association. This morning I was thinking, it's interesting, when we chant the holy name of Krishna, Krishna's there, but it's our purity that invokes the presence of Krishna for us to benefit from the holy name. But the Bhagavatam, we don't manifest the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is already manifested by the purity of Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, if we want to improve our service, our chanting, and our association with Krishna, we can do that directly by associating with the Bhagavatam, because the Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna and it does not depend on our practice of invoking the presence of Krishna, like in the holy name. Bhagavatam is already there. Therefore, we should develop the habit of regularly associating with the Bhagavatam for our own purification. And in this way, as we get more purified by associating with the Bhagavatam, it'll influence our chanting, our purity to manifest Krishna more and more. Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanam, Hari Hari.